Hello YouTube. So today I wanted to show you how I made this really cool Hyperion base / moonshot weapon from Borderlands. So I decided to make the cake because Borderlands 2 would probably have to be, not probably, most definitely be one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. And I'm very excited for the new game that's coming out later this fall, Borderlands the pre-sequel. Now, when you're playing Borderlands 2, you can see the Hyperion base in the sky when you're wandering in Pandora, and then you use the moonshot weapon on that base to destroy the warrior. Now, the new game that's coming out later this fall is going to take place on that Hyperion base on the moon, and the moon is called Elpis. So I'm very excited. I popped in my Borderlands 2, and then when I popped in my Borderlands 2 to play, I decided to make a cake on it. So I really hope you guys enjoy this video. Now, if you have never played a video game in your life, or you just don't know what Borderlands is or get the concept of the cake, that's okay, because I at least show you how you can make a 3D moon-shaped cake and maybe have a floating object orbiting around the moon, maybe like a rocket instead of a spaceship, or it can just be a spaceship of your own. So thank you so much for watching. Alright guys, so I want to talk about a few things before we get the video started. First off, how did I get the cake to be so round? I basically used a Wilton pan, a Wilton 3D pan that you can also use to make soccer balls, basketballs, tennis balls, golf balls, any kind of ball really. So I used that, and then my cake mix. I didn't use a cake box mix. I actually used my own recipe. So my own recipe is a little bit sturdier, so that when you start hacking at it and start making holes at it, it doesn't tear so easily as what the box cake mixes would do, because you know, even on the box it'll say it's super moist, super soft, and so when you try to cut into it, it will completely tear apart. So I will go ahead and I will put the recipe in the description box down below, and I'll also list all the materials, everything you need in the description box below. Now I wanted to show you how I created the guide for my Hyperion base. Basically, I kind of just drew out the image myself, and then I cut it out, and I'm going to use this as a guide to cut this out of my gum paste. Now when I started to create my base, I basically just took it step by step. So those little lips and folds that you see in the center of the base, basically I'm going to use that to glue it down to the other pieces of paper. Next, I get my gray colored fondant, and I use this for my Hyperion base. I take the stencil that I've created and I put that on top of my gum paste. I keep saying fondant, but it's gum paste. And I use gum paste because gum paste will get super hard. So yeah, I basically do that. And then I smooth out my edges, clean up my lines. Next, I roll out some darker gray gum paste, and I take the biggest knife that I have in my kitchen, and I basically cut a few squares out. Next, I apply just a small, tiny bit of water on my Hyperion base, and I start applying my little tiny pieces of square. My goal is to make it look a little council-y, if that makes any bit of sense, but just to kind of make it look like there's some blinky dials and that it's a legit spaceship. Then I use my decorating tip 1M to cut out a circle for that little tiny eye in the Hyperion base. And then I also add a few squares of the same blue that I'm using, and also some light gray. Then I take a shish kebab stick that I had in my drawer, and I dip that into the edible black icing color, and I basically just go ahead and add some dots and lines. So next I want to go ahead and add stilts to my Hyperion base to give it the illusion that it's floating in the air. So I take some of my gum paste, I shape my fingers with it to make it look like a pyramid. I take my 16 gauge wire, I cut a few snippets of that, and I place that directly in the middle of my gum paste pyramid. I add some water in the places I want it to be in, and then I just let it sit there. So I do this for the middle. And then I also place 2 pyramid stilts, I guess you would say, on the very top edges of my Hyperion base. Now the first thing I'm going to do is trim off the tops of my cakes. Because after it bakes it forms that little bubble on top, I want to make sure that I cut that off so the top is completely smooth. Once I have that smoothed out, I want to go ahead and add my filling. I used a buttercream, and to put the filling down, I actually used a Wilton decorating bag. Then I smooth out my frosting. Then I apply the second half of my cake on top. Now because that lip forms on the outer edge of the cake, I take my offset spatula and I smooth that down. Then I'm going to add my first layer of frosting, which is going to be my crumb coat. After I applied my crumb coat, I put my cake in the freezer for a couple of minutes. Once I take it out, I start cutting out my holes, and these are going to act as my craters. After poking holes into my cake, I want to make sure that I also frost my craters. Next, I apply my top coat of frosting. Then after I crumb coat it and then top coat it, this is how it looks like at the end. So first I'm going to start off by coloring my fondant. I use Wilton's black icing color to color my fondant, and then I work that in until it gets to be gray. I wish I had just used a smidge just so that it would have come out a lighter gray. Came out a little bit darker for me, but that's okay. It can be whatever you want if you decide to do this project. Then I start to roll out my fondant. So next I take my fondant and I roll it within my rolling pin, and then I drape that over my moon. I'm also going to use that piece of fondant as my smoother. And I'm really sorry about the angle, guys. When I record, sometimes I forget the camera's still there because I'm still new to making videos, so I forget that I'm recording. But I'm actually going to put a link down in the description box on a website that showed me how to cover a ball cake, because this could be a little bit difficult at first. So basically what I'm doing is I'm starting from the top. Basically I start patting from the top, making sure that it's smooth, and then working my way down to the bottom. Once I get closer to the bottom, I take my kitchen scissors and I start snipping pieces from the bottom. Next, what I do is I take my black icing color and an angled paintbrush to paint lines within the craters. I do this just because Borderlands, it has kind of a comic book kind of art style to it, so this is the reason why I did it. And then I also did the same with white. Then I took the end of my pin that kind of has a pearl ball at the end, and I used that to make indentations to make more craters. Next, I went the extra mile and I decided to create that H shadow behind the Hyperion base. So basically I cut out its stencil, and it's a little bit bigger than what my Hyperion base will actually be. Once I have that stencil cut out, I place it on the section where I want it to be and I start pinning it down. Now once I have everything pinned down, I use a black edible powder to start blotching on my black. And there's my H shadow. Then I also took one of my pins and I start poking a ton of holes into my cake just to make it look a little bit more bumpy as it would be in the moon, I guess. Then after all of that's done, I take my H, my Hyperion base, my moonshot weapon, and I place that right on top, kind of at an angle so that the shadow makes sense. And there you have it, my Hyperion moon base cake. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna start making a lot of videos because I think it's really fun to share with you all. So please subscribe, like the video. If you have any questions, comment. I would love to hear them. Thank you.